Hi, I'm Christy Conlon. I'm an editor and content developer with Northlight Books Mixed Media Division, and I am here today with Michelle Belto, author of the book Wax and Paper Workshop. And Michelle has been in our studio with us this week filming 2 new DVDs, and those DVDs focus on the encaustic part of her art. So before we let her escape and head back to San Antonio, I thought we would sit down and ask Michelle a few burning questions. So have you had fun this week, Michelle? That's the first burning question.
I have. You guys are just great. I always enjoy coming here.
Well, all that means is that we'll invite you more often. So.
Good to go. That also means more work for me, right?
Of course, but I think you're up to the challenge. So I thought that the first question that we should get off the table is a little bit about your experience in working in encaustic. How long have you been working with wax, and how did you discover this interesting medium?
I've actually been working for about 6 years. I discovered it by chance. I had been a paper maker for about 20 years, and I had been looking for something to put on my paper, some medium. I played with oil, I played with acrylic and mixed media, and nothing just seemed to work. So a friend of mine told me to go out and check wax. It just so happened that R&F, a major paint supplier, was bringing a workshop into San Antonio area. So it was happenstance and synchronicity and good luck. So I took the first intensive encaustic workshop about 6 years ago and discovered that it was the perfect medium for the paper, and I've never looked back since.
Well, and that's interesting because one of the other questions I had was which really came first for you, the paper or the wax? Obviously, you said you've been doing paper for about 20 years, and that's also a pretty significant part of your book. We're focusing on encaustic this week. But where are you with paper versus wax in your artistic career now that you work with both? Do you find that wax is taking more of your time, or is paper still your first true love?
I've been in the last 3 or 4 years, I've really come to understand that it's not either or, it's really both and. It's a conversation. So I have to really look at the paper, I have to really honor the paper and honor the wax, and I have to keep a dialogue between the two. So it's hard to say. I think time-wise, the paper takes a lot longer, just because it's a long process. I do studio time and make 50-gallon trash cans full of pulp, and then I work with that pulp, and extend it and work with it over a long period of time, working with the supports. And then I find that's part of the grunt work. It's actually part of the work. And then when I get to the wax, it's more of the fun. But I have to make sure that the wax and the paper work together, that one's not subservient to the other, so to speak.
Right. You don't want one kind of domineering or taking over the whole scene of everything. And I know that part of your life before you worked extensively in art, you were in theater. And I know that you were probably quite dramatic at that point in time. And I just wonder, how does that part of your life experience influence your work?
Well, I don't know if the word dramatic is how it translates into. You may like it, but I don't know if that translates into my work as being dramatic. But what is coming out more and more strongly in my new work is story. So I'm finding that I'm working with my own personal memories as story, and as a way to illustrate what I consider life truths, things that I believe, that I know, that I know, that I know. And so with those 3 elements, that's what I'm trying to work with in terms of creating a visual, concrete product, or not product, but concrete object that says something about those 3 pieces.
Okay, we've spent so much time this week talking about different techniques. I'm wondering if you can address how some of those techniques, such as mark making or something like that, or even something like the colors that you choose to work with, also work into that concept of story. Because a lot of your work, from my perspective, is more abstract. So, how do you kind of put across the fact that there's a story here?
Well, that's going to be changing. You know, I think I spent these 6 years in learning and exploring and teaching and solidifying my concepts in terms of the book. And I'm now a little bit freer to really pursue a different direction. So I think you're going to see the story element come out in extensive mark making, really detailed mark making, symbolic mark making. And I'm exploring different processes to do that. It's also going to come out in sculpture. So I'm moving more and more in my own work to 3D, which I think I've been heading there all my life. I just didn't know it. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this new direction and perhaps a new book in the future.
Perhaps. Have to wait and see about that one. In addition to your own work in both your books and your DVDs, you've been incredibly generous in showcasing the work of other artists working in encaustic, whether that be their primary medium or not. They do show up. You have a terrific contributor gallery in Wax and Paper Workshop and a gallery at the end of each of your videos. Why do you do that? What do you think you're bringing to the table as far as both content to these products of yours and to the message that you're trying to get out there about encaustic?
Well, I think it's just a foundational belief that I have that I don't know the whole truth. And I'm excited by what my peers are doing in the world of wax. Many of them are trained not only as paper makers, but as print makers and painters and sculptors. And you know, they've come in with that whole experience and education and tradition, and they're exploring wax in their arenas. And it's not someplace that I might be interested in going, but it's something that I really appreciate. And as a teacher, I just always bring in models for people to look at, to expand their own horizons, to get a better. I like the idea of a lot of knowledge out there and a lot of examples. And because some of these are fine artists that are have a small, maybe a little small niche area, they might be less easy to find. And so I want to bring them to the attention of my readers.
And where do you think that you and your peers are moving the medium to in the future? Any ideas? What are you seeing as being some of the trends in encaustic?
Well, what I'm seeing is that for it's actually been an experience for artists, maybe it's only 10, 12, 15 years old at the most,
Right.
in terms of mainstream. And for the first 5 years or so, we were seeing that professional artists and mixed media artists especially, were coming in, meeting wax and getting really excited and learning a lot of techniques, some of the ones that we've been sharing today, picking up mixed media materials and incorporating them in wax. And I think that the artist who, at least in the fine art field, the artists who, as I said, were trained as printmakers or sculptors or oil painters, for example, they've said, okay, I've explored these mixed media techniques now, but that's really not who I am. So they're taking wax and back into their own primary modality, and they're really pushing the boundaries. So in printmaking, for example, we have artists who are carving wax plates and running them through a press, or silk screening, creating ways to silk screen onto wax. And so they're really, because they're masters of their own fine art modality, they're now marrying that with wax. And I think that in the next 10 years, you are going to see some incredible, incredible work.
Well, on the flip side of the professional artists who are starting to adopt the medium, you have a lot of people who are just hearing about it now and just saying, huh, what is this whole encaustic painting, wax working type of thing? And as you're well aware, every time you come into our studios, there's a few of us here who kind of like freak out over, oh my God, this is so cool, I want to do it. Can I mix that paint for you, Michelle? Um, so what advice would you have in light of all of these other conversations we've had for the person who is thinking about starting it as a hobby?
Yeah, these are the people that I work with. These are my community. I love people that are just starting out. Encaustic offers such a variety and such a blameless, non-judgmental way of working. There are no accidents. I mean, there are accidents, but they're all happy accidents. You can't make a mistake. You can always just fuse it out or scrape it off. And I'm really, I would really like people just to take a class. I think it's important that you study with someone. I also think it's important that, because there is some safety issues, I think it's important that you find the credentials of who you're studying with. How many classes did they take, and who did they take them from? But study with someone so that you've got the leisure of one day or 2 days just in a safe space with somebody else's environment to play, and then begin to explore on your own. And I think that you will fall in love with the medium as I have.
And if someone were interested in finding out a little bit more information about your work, or perhaps where you might be in terms of teaching and workshops over the next year or so?
What I do is I update my website, so you could find that on michellebelto.com.
Okay.
A really good place to go. One of the most fun places that I teach at is encaustic camp. Patricia Sedgebrook
Another
started
one of
that.
our authors.
Yes. And there's six artists, and you have 3 full days of working with wax in a variety of different ways, studying under 3 different, very professional, qualified teachers.
Who probably all have very different styles.
Very different styles, and this is going to be. We were in Salem, Oregon, and now we're moving to Seattle this year.
Okay.
And it's at the end of the summer, or right like July, August. I forget the dates, but check the website. They're just getting ready to launch the new encausticamp.com. So that's one of my favorite places to go.
So you'll be there, and you'll probably be at a few other events over the next year or so.
I will.
And again, your web address, in case anyone would like to check that out or to visit you, learn more about you. Michelle also has a blog through her website.
Yes, it's michellebelto.com.
And what's the name of your book again, Michelle?
Wax and Paper Workshop.
Thank you.
Bye.